You are listening to the Getting Lucky Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm your host, Lucky Robert Curtis, and to help us break down the UFC on FX Belfort versus Bisping card, we have returning back to the show, English Tom Burton.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. English is, of course, our UK correspondent.
Yeah.
This was a hell of a card. From top to bottom, I was actually really excited about all of the fights. There were some interesting ones. There was some referee drama.
Oh God!
But ultimately, I felt like for an FX card, this was bloody brilliant.
It was bloody brilliant. I mean, we can save the referee drama till later because there's just so much to talk about on that issue. But it being a Brazil card filled with Brazilian fighters, you were pretty much expecting lots of finishes.
Yes, and lots of subs. 3 subs in this.
Oh, God,
and I believe previously, like, if anyone got a sub, they were guaranteed sub of the night in previous cards, because there'd be like none or just 1. 3 subs.
This is a big middle finger to the people who say you never see submissions in MMA anymore.
Well, it's probably because none of the people on this card were wrestlers. I will say this. Before we get into the fights, normally Brazil has brilliant crowds. Their fans are exuberant. It's a celebration throughout the entire show, from the very start of the prelims all the way to the end. I felt this crowd was weak. The stadium or arena was mainly empty through the prelims, and there was booing in the, I believe,
CB Dollaway fight as well.
Yeah, and in the Pepe Milton Viera fight and the CB Dollaway fight. That's ridiculous. Those were the 2 best fights of the night.
It was uncalled for because obviously the home country guy lost, and they obviously didn't like that. And normally you kind of expect it from these high energy crowds, but it was still completely uncalled for.
But I mean, they were booing good fights, even by Brazilian fighters. You know, it was silly. Now, obviously, they did show that they are a true Brazilian crowd. When someone would pass from guard to half guard, you'd get a cheer.
Yeah.
So obviously they're knowledgeable, but this is probably one of the worst Brazilian crowds I've seen. Hopefully they rebound with their next pay-per-view. Shall we talk about the Facebook fight?
Yeah, sure.
The fighter, whose name I love to say more than anyone else's, Masar. Yes, sir, Masar. He fought against CJ Keith. Now, I don't know if you're very well versed in black comedies in America. And by black comedies, I don't mean dark comedies. I mean literally African-American comedies. But CJ Keith, to me, looks exactly like DJ Pooh from Friday. You ever seen that movie?
No, I'm afraid I haven't. We're not really that big in black comedies in the UK.
I figured you wouldn't be.
No.
But DJ Pooh is the character in Friday. It says to Debo, yeah, it'll be like both of ours, talking about his bike, and then he gets knocked out. I think he looks exactly like DJ Pooh. CJ Keith missed weight. He came in about 1.5 pounds over the limit, or 157.5. Masar showed sick power with a body lock slam and then a beautiful suplex. Masar is a monster, isn't he?
Yeah, I agree. And is this a new trend as well? Are we starting to see wrestling coming to Brazil? I think we are, because obviously the guys at Nova União have excellent wrestling as well. I mean, is this a new trend going on?
It may be. In fact, there was one fight in particular that we'll get back to this, where I was surprised because it was a role reversal. That's later on in the prelims.
Yeah.
But when Masar did the suplex, he basically transitioned straight into that side choke, and I just got the feeling that when this little bulldog, these guys are lightweights, gets his arms on you, I don't think you're getting out.
No.
And CJ Keith's head nearly popped off.
Not only that, CJ Keith, obviously he's down 2 fights, he's missed weight, he's been handed his walking papers right after the event.
Yeah.
That without question.
And he looked completely out of his depth against Masar facing a hostile crowd.
Yeah.
A crowd that was 25% full, even. One thing I do want to point out, and you'll see this throughout the entire show, after Masar won, overcome with emotion, tears of joy, collapsing to the canvas, huge smile on his face. This is the spirit of Brazil, this unfettered, pure joy. I love seeing it, and also when you see someone like Masar and other fighters on this card, which are basically these warrior philosophers of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's a nice spectacle, and I like seeing sort of these interesting mix of cultures where Americans we treat it very much like a sport. The Japanese, the polite austerity of it, all self-contained. The Russian Terminator killers, which we'll see one of those on this card. Masar Onuba, I love him. I love him. I love him. Will he be a contender? Probably not. He's probably going to get Russell humped. But in this fight, DJ Pooh, you got knocked the fuck out! The next prelims are on the Fuel TV card. We had Vagner Prado versus a literal last-minute replacement, 2 weeks' notice, Ildemar Alcantara. And I did confirm that Ildemar is actually Yuri's brother. Ildemar, a light heavyweight. He's actually normally a middleweight. Over 6 feet. I think he's 6'1", 6'2". His little brother is a bantamweight. They're literally like the Brazilian version of the Guida brothers. One's a heavyweight, and the other one's clay. Prado came out super emotional, jumping around, being crazy. And when I looked at his waistline and saw how doughy it was, I thought maybe you should be conserving some of this energy. What did you think? Yeah,
I agree. I think he looked a little bit heavy in that fight. Obviously, it was a loss for him because he didn't come out to Flight of the Valkyries. Sorry, Ride of the Valkyries. Yep. So I have no sympathy for him.
I noticed with Ildemar, he kept his hands really low, and he didn't have any head movement, which is actually something you'll see with Yuri, his brother. It seemed like they have the same sort of fixed, they're wearing the Batman suit. You know how Batman can't look left or right in that cowl? But his chin held up. He ate lots of, I believe, right hooks. Just bang, 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 right on the chin. Second round, he gets a takedown. He goes for a sub. It's reversed. Then he rolls into a knee bar. And for some reason, Vagner Prado thought he would just kick off the hands, never tried to actually get his leg free. And eventually, Ildemar took the ankle, wrapped it underneath his armpit, and then almost immediately, Vagner Prado was hollering for his Valkyrie warriors to rescue him.
Yeah, shake it off. You have to shake off the knee bar. You've got to do everything in your power. And he just didn't do it. He didn't look like he wanted to get out of it. He just gave up.
I think he was gassed from jumping around and being all crazy when he came out.
Yeah, like you said.
Am I overthinking his entrance? Joe Rogan has a great point. He says when you're in a sub position where you're about to be submitted, either rear naked choke, whatever, you have to fight like you're drowning, which is like that pure primal. And it didn't look like Vagner did that at all.
Yeah.
Kicking off the hands, never once trying to loosen his leg. And this was a second round, so that leg should have been really sweaty.
I believe Frank Mir has kind of the same philosophy as well. Like, when you're just about to tap, don't hold your hand in the air, fight it. Either tap or fight the escape.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, he's just about to tap. He's got his hand like, I'm going to tap, but I'm just going to wait a little bit longer. Okay, tap, 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 tap. It's like, well, if you're not going to try to get out, and you're waiting to tap, and your hand's conveniently poised so the ref can see that you're about to, well, then either just tap or fight.
I know, it's crazy.
I agree. That's a bit ironic. Would you tap, if you were a mixed martial artist, would you go Nogueira, like, break it, I don't care, or would you tap right away?
You've either got to be a Gracie or a Nogueira to not tap.
Yeah, I would tap.
It's something else.
Particularly if it was like a knee bar like this one. Anything doing with my legs, I'm tapping.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm kind of a coward, so I don't know if I would ever fight anyway. So it's a moot point. Let's talk about the younger Alcantara, Yuri, fighting Pedro Nobre, the man with the papier-mâché head.
Oh.
This fight was ruled a no contest, but prior to that, Yuri, he's a huge bantamweight. But he also sort of showed the same sort of striking defense that I saw with his brother. Hands a little bit low, no head movement at all. Maybe he's got a chin like his brother does, but he was clearly, I think, a class above Pedro. Got him to the ground, took the back, very precise, deliberate, cautious strikes. I mean, it gets to this point. Let me ask what you think. What is the back of the head? On the show, we heard the headphone theory, where anything not covered by these headphones, like the one I'm wearing now to do this show, anything on the back, practically about 6 or 7 inches across the back of your head is quote-unquote the back of your head. Then you've got the cell phone theory, where you basically have like a 2-inch stripe running down the back of your head. What do you think?
I think it's generally supposed to be quite a small area. It's supposed to be literally just a small rectangular space at the back of your head, in my opinion. And it was shown in this fight. Fighters have been abusing this by face planting their head onto the mat, covering the sides of their head, and just turtling.
Yeah, and even worse than that, when they feel strikes coming, they turn the back of their
Yeah.
head towards the strike. Now, maybe that's human nature, but I think when you see fighters also like just putting down one finger to avoid being kneed, yeah, there's obviously some strategy there.
Yeah. I think it's generally a problem that we have in mixed martial arts. I think if fighters are doing that, you obviously can't see if they're out or if they're actually still defending. So in my opinion, if a referee sees 4 strikes to the head, just count it as a TKO, because that's not defending in my opinion.
There is a movie by Tommy Lee Jones, I believe called something like The Three Burials of something Mulciades or something. Well, this card is The Three Burials of Dan Miragliotta, and this is burial number 1.
Yeah.
He was the referee for this match. And yes, there were a couple of punches that were in gray areas, but they were very soft punches. What I think caused Prado's papier-mâché head to split open and candy spill out for all of the lovely Brazilian children was an elbow. Now that elbow, clearly the point of the elbow landed clearly on the ear. The forearm may have crossed over to the back of the head a little bit. But that was a legal shot, I think, by either definition of what constitutes the back of the head. What I think happened, I think you can look at this in 2 ways. Pedro Nobre, which sounds like he's straight a character out of Liche, what is it? The Jack Black movie where he's a Mexican
Nacho
wrestler.
Libre.
Nacho Libre. So Nacho, I think either one said, I'm getting my ass kicked, and I'm going to fake an injury and get the hell out of here. Because he was, I mean, let's face it, he was really hamming it up as he walked out of the ring. 25 minutes later, walking out with his trainers, looking like he'd just taken a gunshot wound. Nacho either did some gamesmanship, which Kenny Florian hinted at, or I think he had referred pain. That elbow to right behind the ear probably felt like the back of the head to him. You know, like how when a fighter gets hit with a punch and they take a knuckle in the eye, they're positive they just took a thumb. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think he was obviously just trying to get out of the fight and just not have that loss on his card. And I'm glad to say that I hope that people will remember this fight and it will stick for the rest of his career and he'll be remembered for that moment, because I don't like seeing fighters take advantage of the rules like that at all. I mean, it's what I would call Josh Koscheck-ing.
Yeah, that's true. Josh Koscheck. He has done everything in his power to piss off just about everyone. The good news is that Dana White believes that Dan Miragliotta, the referee who stopped it, was full of crap, gave Yuri his win bonus, and we probably won't see Pedro again. And I think Dana White's probably coming down on the side of Kenny and thinking there was some gamesmanship there. I will say this. Dan Miragliotta was speaking to Yuri about warning him no headshots, watch the back of the head, in English.
Yeah.
I don't know if Yuri speaks English. And so when he was actually talking to Nacho Libre about whether or not he wanted to continue, he had to bring a translator in and say, can he continue? So isn't there some sort of responsibility by the commission to bring in a referee for every fight that the fighters can understand?
I don't think it's that, though. I think the UFC generally doesn't like using the regional commissions, because remember we had that problem in Australia where the judges screwed up. They were local judges and they screwed up the card.
But now, Mario Yamasaki speaks Portuguese.
Yeah.
You're telling me there's no other referee in the United States that speaks
Well,
Portuguese?
Mario Yamasaki has experience in the United States, though. That's the difference.
Right, that's what I'm saying. There's no other judge in the United States that speaks Portuguese?
Well, I don't know.
Or at least, like, if you're going to work in Brazil, here are the words in Portuguese you need to learn. Back of the head, eye poke, groin kick, stop, protect yourself. I would figure that'd be part of the job.
Yeah, there definitely needs to be changes in the commission in how they handle these overseas shows.
Do you know if this was a self-regulated show, or was there, quote-unquote, a Brazilian commission? Because in Queensland, they self-regulated.
I'm not really sure. I think they just brought down the Las Vegas commission. Because that's what they do in the UK, because we don't have a commission either.
Let's go to the next fight. Lightweight Edson Barboza versus Lucas Martins. One thing, this is my criticism of the UFC, and it's encapsulated in their pre-fight package for Edson Barboza. All they talked about was the heel kick.
Yeah.
They only briefly, very, very lightly touched on the fact he's coming off of a loss.
Yeah.
That's what I hate. Like, for instance, if you're watching a football match and Man U is about to play Liverpool, they will talk about how shitty Liverpool has been playing. Very upfront. It's not like, no, listen, we have to hide the fact that Liverpool has been in disarray for 4 years.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to turn off viewers. I think that affects the athletic integrity of the announcing and the sport itself. To a little degree. Not crazy, but it's still annoying to me.
What they should have said, in my opinion, was Edson Barboza is coming off a loss because he couldn't handle the style of Jamie Varner's wrestling plus his stand-up both together combined. Now he's changed camps and is now fighting with Frankie Edgar, and he's learning this American style of mixed martial arts, so he knows to look out for.
Yes, and Edgar was a very vocal proponent for Barboza on Twitter. Here's what I think. I was actually pimping Lucas Martins, who was undefeated, I believe 12-0 coming into this fight. Not only was Edson faster, just in pure hand speed, his technique was cleaner. So when he's throwing his punches from A to B, he's traveling less of a distance, very sharp, with fast hand speed.
And with those long limbs as well.
Yeah, and Lucas, his punches were wider. Everything he threw was a bit more of a brawl, a bit more of a looping. And when Martins got dropped, I believe with a short left hook, Martins was kind of coming into it. He was dropping his head every time he started to throw. It seemed to me like he'd never been hurt before, because he immediately went into panic mode. Like you see other fighters that get clipped and they immediately grab a single.
Yeah.
Or the crazy ones like Lieben and our guy Garcia start throwing bombs like crazy. Lucas looked like he panicked a little bit. He dropped to his knees and then immediately fell back to the cage and turtled.
Yeah, I think this is a problem because of his inexperience against in the big leagues, as I'd call it, with guys like Edson Barboza. He'd never really been caught like that before in his career, and he just didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, to your point, he's been walking over inferior competition, and hasn't had a situation where he's had to dig in a bit deeper. He didn't... When he was down, he literally just covered up. He didn't try to get out. He didn't try to go pull guard or anything. I think what I'm calling it is his autopilot factor. He really needs to work on that.
Yeah.
I think he's a gamer. I think he needs a lot of work cleaning up his the particulars, his fundamentals. But he could probably make some noise at lightweight overall.
Yeah.
With Edson, this is a highlight knockout for him, a highlight finish, but we won't really get a good feel for him until he fights another wrestler. Let's move on to the next fight. A featherweight matchup, Diego Nunes versus Nick Lentz. I would think that if I was Diego Nunes, I would do two things. I would, one, scout my opponent and realize that Nick Lentz is only looking to take me down, and maybe that might affect how many knees and kicks I throw. And two, I would really, really, really work on my cardio.
That's clearly a problem when fighting wrestlers. I mean, you got these explosive Brazilians who have these... Well, it doesn't really apply to Diego Nunes, but who usually look for the finish, and they just gas out when they are pressured against the cage or on the mat against these wrestlers, and they don't know how to deal with it. It's
a big difference. Like Diego Nunes and a lot of these guys, like Edson Barboza, are all fast twitch athletes. Very explosive, very powerful, but as soon as they get into that isometric grind, where their muscles are just sitting there in constant pressure and constant exertion, it's like you can just see their power bar going... Boo. After the first round, Nunes looked utterly exhausted. Totally exhausted. In fact, I even would have given that a 10-8 round. But I'm a little bit more liberal with providing a scoring difference. Round 2 starts, another takedown. In the rounds 1 and 2, Nunes' corner was saying, throw kicks. They're essential to your game. You have to throw kicks. You have to throw kicks. And then after round 2, they're like, don't throw kicks anymore. And then in round 3, he was far more effective. Some of the problems that Nunes had in this fight have to be blamed on his corner.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of obvious you don't throw kicks with wrestlers. Well, you can throw kicks, just not lead off with a kick. You end a combination with a kick, so they can't see the kick coming. But this is supposed to be Black House, which is the fight camp of Anderson Silva, Lyoto Machida, and Minotauro Nogueira, and that was some of the poorest cornering I'd seen in the UFC, and this is from former champions and current middleweight champion.
Do you think Diego Nunes might be the Brazilian version of Melvin Gillard? Like, lots of talent, physical freak, but kind of iffy on the mental part of it?
Well, you mean like Diego Sanchez as well?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say because Diego Sanchez is legitimately insane.
Yeah.
All I can wonder is if Diego Nunes actually had a corner that was giving him good advice. Like, he didn't need to throw any kicks against Nick Lentz to win. Because Nick Lentz was getting that takedown and then grinding out. Like, literally, like Mool around from Indiana Jones, ripping into his heart and pulling it out and showing it to him as he ground out his will to live on the cage and on the mat. Had Nunes stood, traded punches, he could have easily, I think, outpointed Lentz for a decision win. But instead, at the end, it looked like he'd just ridden the Tour de France without EPO. See, we're timely. We're cutting edge. Let's talk about the next fight. Middleweight, Ronny Marks versus Andrew Craig. I predicted that this is where the storybook for Andrew Craig would end. Newcomer to the UFC, took a fight on short notice against Kyle Noakes. He won that fight, had a head kick for tennis legend Rafael Nadal. just kidding. One thing that was interesting was that during the show, they said that when Ronny Marks fought and won against Aaron Simpson, which is 185 middleweight, during the fight, right before he came out, he weighed in at 217. So for those people that don't believe that weight cut is science, or like everyone's exaggerating when they say they cut 30 pounds, I hope this is another little brick of evidence for you to have to consider. Yeah. When I interviewed Tim Means, he said that he cuts 20, 25 pounds, and he's a lightweight. With that in shape. Craig, to me, Andrew Craig, looks like the Techno Viking. Have you seen that video?
Oh, yeah. Who does he look like?
Well, he looks like Keith Jardine.
Yeah, Keith Jardine, yeah.
Yeah, but you put the Techno Viking in with some bad cornrows, you got Andrew Craig. Now, this is the fight I was talking about earlier. This was the Bizarro World fight. Andrew Craig wanted to stand and bang, but the Brazilian was grinding him with Wallenstall against the cage looking for takedowns. What is going on here? Is this the full circle of mixed martial arts? One thing interesting is Ronny Marks has a tattoo that you saw very, very evidently on his, I believe, his left pec that said, "Thanks, God." I'm pretty sure English isn't his first language. And I'm almost certain he wanted it to be a little bit more honorific, more solemn, like "Thanks be to God" or "Thank you, Jesus." Thanks, God. This fight was dominated by wrestling. A lot of grinding. Andrew Craig's gas tank didn't look very good. In fact, his conditioning, his body type, doesn't look like he's in that great a shape. Round 3, Andrew Craig did clip Ronny Marks with like a minute and a half left to go, but instead of trying to stand up with him and use a full 90 seconds, he went down to the ground. Now, Kenny Florian, during the fight commentating, said he thought it was a good idea to go for submission. But I completely disagree, because when you got a guy clipped, his defense on the ground is much better than his defense standing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is all about reading distances and angles and head movement and everything. When you go to the ground, it's very easy for him to suffocate and stall for 90 seconds.
Yeah, I think generally you should have probably looked to throw more punches on the ground rather than submission, and give him time to recuperate and get back into the state of mind that he needed to escape that.
I think he shouldn't have gone to the ground at all. I think he should have gotten Marks to stand up and then flurried like crazy. But it is what it is. Andrew Craig came away with a loss. Ronny Marks marches on into middleweight. Let's talk about the last prelim fight, which I thought was head and shoulders the best fight of all of the preliminary fights, and the runner-up for fight of the night. And that was Godofredo Castro, or a.k.a. Pepe, as they say on the broadcast, versus Milton Viera. Little fun fact, did you know that Godofredo Castro has a brother who is also a black belt, and his name is Godofredo Claudio? Now, this throws me off.
It sounds Italian.
But their first names are both Godofredo, and their last names are different. What the hell is going on here? Or are they half-brothers and they just decided we're going to name them both Godofredo?
Maybe they're doing that Japanese thing where they...
first name last?
Like, Emelianenko Fedor.
So you're saying, like, his first name is Castro?
Great.
Alright, Milton is the higher-ranked black belt. He's a second-degree black belt. Godofredo is a first-degree black belt. Which is funny, because on his walkout and on his back, he has 3 red stripes on his tattoo and on his belt. I don't know what that was about. If you're a Brazilian and you practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and that doesn't mean he's not a third-degree black belt, then you let us know in the comments. Because to me, that thinks that he's saying, is that his goal? By the way, that tattoo on his back kind of looked like a combination of Wu-Tang Clan and the new Spider-Man logo. I'm not sure if I want to give it a thumbs up or not. But because I like Neymar, I'll give it a thumbs up. I think despite having the lesser BJJ pedigree, I think Godofredo was better almost everywhere. I think I love him in the guard, much more active with submissions. It looked to me like Milton almost fought like a wrestler, got him down and didn't do a lot from the top. Godofredo got a beautiful Kimura that flipped Milton all the way over and got Pepe into full mount and then back. I thought round 2 was as dominant as any round in the fight. Is there anything you're taking away from this? Do you think a split decision was justified for this fight?
No, I think Godofredo should have taken that with a unanimous decision. I think he did enough as well. And it's kind of a problem with these black belts, these ADCC black belts. They're kind of more patient. But the difference between mixed martial arts and ADCC is that in the submission grappling matches, they get a lot more time to work.
Yeah.
Whereas with mixed martial arts, you probably got to be more attacking off your back.
Yeah, you got to be scoring.
Yeah.
Whereas Milton Viera seemed to be very content to just sort of weather the storm, ride it out, just like how you said with the ADCC or other grappling tournaments. Kind of get his bearings and then in 2 or 3 minutes go for something. Really slow, patient build up. I thought Pepe looked better with his striking. He looked better with his jiu-jitsu. He looked better with his kicks. He was better with transitions. The only thing that Viera was good at was the takedowns. That was it. I can see how Viera might have taken round 1 and round 3. I can see how it would have happened, although I don't think he won either round. But it was close because he did get a couple of takedowns. But I do think Pepe won the fight. So I'm actually thinking a split decision is actually the fairest result here. Okay, surprise, surprise. The other thing I would say is I think Pepe, I think he has potential, but I think he really needs to clean up his striking. He looks like a guy that would fight like Edson Barboza on the feet. He looks like he's got a lot of natural speed, but his hand speed actually didn't look that great to me. He looked like he was tired from round 1 forward with how slow his hands were going. So with that, with not the greatest hand speed, he has to have great technique, and he was flailing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No straights, no jabs, no uppercuts, nothing. All of them were overhands and hooks.
Kind of Joey Beltran style, I'd call it.
Yeah, but with no power.
Yeah.
So a win for Pepe. He's got a lot of work to do. He's only 25. He's been fighting since he was 15, off and on. But to me, and you can add your opinion to this, that was the class fight of the prelims. What do you think?
Yeah, I loved it because it was kind of like a really technical grappling match, and I really like those rather than one guy that's superior completely on the ground to a guy with no submission defense or wrestling. So I really like that fight. Yeah,
like Masar and Onuba getting a overmatched DJ Poo in a side choke.
Yeah.
I liked that fight because, like you said, it was technical, but it was a very interesting contrast of jiu-jitsu styles. Godofredo had the very hyper-aggressive attacking from the guard, from the back, whereas Milton Viera had more of a slow, grind-him-out game. And in fact, he was so slow, I don't know if he even got in position for a submission. That is it for the prelims. We're going to end it here for part 1. Check back for part 2, where we cover only the main card. Again, I am Lucky Robert Curtis, and I'm joined by English Tom.
Cheerio, fellas.
See you next time.